From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
We hope you're having a wonderful day in the heat, celebrating the joy of reading here on the National Mall. Just before we start, I have a couple of housekeeping measures. I want to tell you that this presentation is being filmed for the Library of Congress's website for their archives, so please be mindful of that as you enjoy this presentation. Also, please don't sit on the camera risers in the back of the pavilion. With that said, I'm Nora Krug. I write a column for the Washington Post, which is another sponsor of this wonderful event. And I'm very honored to be here to introduce James Ransome, who has illustrated more than 20 children's books, including The Creation, How Many Stars in the Sky, Sweet Clara, and The Freedom Quilt. He is a two-time recipient of the Coretta Scott King Award for Illustration for The Creation and for Uncle Jed's Barbershop. He's also completed several commissioned murals for the Children's Museum in Indianapolis and the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. Ransom lives in upstate New York with his wife, Lisa? Yes. Lisa Klein Ransom, who is also a children's book writer, and the two have collaborated on several books, including Satchel Paige, Quilt Alphabet, Quilt Counting, and Pele. And amid all of this work, they also have managed to raise 4 children, 3 of whom are now teenagers. Ransome's latest book is Gunnar, which is a first for him as he has both written and illustrated the book. We're looking forward to seeing more of that from him. And I have the wonderful honor of saying it's also his birthday today, so.
Thank you so much. Well, it's really a pleasure to be here, and I feel the same way you guys feel. I'm hot and tired. So I'm going to try to make this exciting. I'm going to do a storytelling of Gunnar, my first book that I wrote and illustrated, and it's going to be, I'm not used to doing this. As an illustrator, I'm used to doing PowerPoint presentations, but now I have to sort of tell the story and flip the pages. Way too much to do at once, but I'm going to give it a shot. And then after that, I'm going to, I guess I answer a few questions based on how much time we have left. I'm watching my timekeeper here. But I really want to draw with some of the young people that are here today. So I'm going to be inviting kids to come up to write a number. I'm going to show you how I can draw from a number. I will make sure I turn the pad so the people on this side can see. But it's going to be hard to accommodate everyone because it's such a wide area here. So let's get started with Gunnar. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Gunnar and how it came about. I'm a big football fan, and I grew up in North Carolina, and 1972 I started watching football. So I'm a Miami Dolphin fan. And I always talk to kids. Somehow when I go to schools, I end up talking to kids about my football team. There's always usually a question that comes up. And it was just always interesting to me how some kids just had this sense of winning. I mean, they would do anything to win and to want to win. And I just found that interesting. And so when I came to writing this book, I wanted to write about that need and desire to win, to help kids understand that we don't always win. And there's actually 2 sides who are trying to win. And your story may be compelling, but maybe a story on the other side of the field, which is just as compelling as yours, to win. So that's how Gunnar came about. So it starts off with, Gunnar is a great name for a boy who loved football. He didn't look like a football player. He was too short and too round. Gunnar was the only child of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who didn't like sports at all. But they knew their son liked sports, and they made sure he was the first child in line when it came to signing up for the Pee Wee League football team. Told you this would be hard. Gunnar said that he wanted to be a quarterback, but everyone looked at him and laughed because he didn't look like a quarterback. But when they saw him throw a football, they said, "Oh my God!" The laughing stopped because he had a great arm. So they said, you can be a quarterback, but you can be a third-string quarterback. But mainly because of the way he looked, because he had a much better arm than all the other players. So once the season started, Gunnar sat the bench all year long. He never got a chance to play, but he was always the first one at practice, the last one to leave. On Saturdays, he would watch the college games. On Sunday, he would watch the pros. He always studied his book and his plays. But he sat the bench all year. But in the last game of the season, in the Pee Wee County Championship, the Mighty Bowl, in the fourth quarter, when his team, the Malden Tigers, were down, the first quarterback was hit, and actually someone stepped on his fingers, and he went home. And then the second-string quarterback came in, and he was hit so hard he saw stars, and his mommy took him to the hospital. But no one was excited when Gunnar went into the game. Actually, everyone was pretty quiet. And no one was especially excited when he ran the wrong way on the first play and he was sacked. But his parents cheered, "Go Gunnar." But everyone cheered after he threw his first touchdown, a spiral, to a wide receiver in the end zone. So they were 2 scores down, and he had to score one more time. The defense got the ball back, and Gunnar went back in, and again his parents cheered, "Go Gunnar." But everyone cheered once again once he scored. He threw a long bomb for a touchdown. And now the game was tied. And everyone was excited when Gunnar went back onto the field. His coach said, "You can win this game. We can win the championship. We just need one more score." They only had minutes left in the game. The offense slowly moved down the field. The running backs ran, the receivers caught, and they slowly moved down towards the end zone. But everyone was surprised when Gunnar tried to throw a pass to his wide receiver, and a defensive back from the other team intercepted the ball and ran it in for a touchdown and won the game. So Gunnar's team didn't win, but they still carried him off the field because they felt he tried his hardest and he was a hero to them. And after the game, they went out for ice cream, and his coach gave him Rookie of the Year trophy. And everyone gave him a high five in the ice cream parlor. The next morning, while having breakfast, Gunnar's father was reading the newspaper. He read that a little girl from across town on the Woodland team intercepted the ball and ran it in for a touchdown. And it was her first time in the game playing for her team. And that's the story of Gunnar, our football hero. So Gunnar is a hero, although he did not win the game. And we can all be heroes without always coming in first. There's lots of things we can accomplish, lots of challenges we can overcome and still be successful. Sometimes I know it sounds cliche, but sometimes it's something more important than being the one with the highest score or the one who walks away with the championship. There are other small challenges that we can be winners at. So that's what I want to do about Gunnar. And the idea about this little girl who's her first time in, no one knows anything about her until she gets in and she scores the winning touchdown for her team. I just felt that that was a very interesting, compelling story that I want to tell, built around Gunnar, this football player. Are there any questions about Gunnar that I could answer quickly? I'd like to tell you guys some things about how I got started as an illustrator, if not. But Gunnar, we could talk about. Yes, microphone, please.
I wonder if you would have any advice to give sort of a beginning children's book writer You know, we're told different things, you know, about how the text and the illustrations are supposed to interact. Can you make
as a writer? Or as an
yeah,
illustrator?
what would you say as an illustrator to a beginning writer?
What would I say to an illustrator, beginning writer? That's a good way to phrase it, because I don't feel like I'm really a writer yet. I would say write your story and try to tell your story, and don't, although you should leave some things for the illustrator. And I guess that's probably the hardest part for an early writer, is those parts you give to an illustrator. You want to sort of set the illustrator up and give him clues to what's in your imagination, if that helps, rather than being direct and telling him the person has on, let's say boots, for example. If you want the character to have on boots, maybe you say something about putting the boots on, how you put the boots on, rather than, you know, the person just has on boots. It's things like that. It's sort of, I love when writers just give me great clues for visual images. And I think that's what I look for in stories. And also sometimes how they leave certain things for me to add. I always think of it as it's ice cream. It's my job to put the sprinkles on the tops. The text is the ice cream, and I put the sprinkles on top of the ice cream. That's what I try to do. So I don't want you to give me all the information. I want you to just sort of create a pathway for me to walk down as the artist. Okay? Some people wonder, and this is actually a good question about writing and illustrating. How did I get to be here today talking about my books? And I've illustrated almost 50 books to date. I was a young boy growing up in a small town in North Carolina. In this small town I came from, there were not a lot of opportunities for me. Someone who wanted to be an artist since the 3rd grade. Art wasn't even taught in the schools I attended. And there were no artists to be around to take me to their studios or even go to museums to see artwork. So my first things that inspired me were comic books and cartoons on television, like so many kids. I started drawing at a very early age, as well as writing stories. I wrote stories to give me a reason to draw pictures. Then I became influenced by Mad Magazine, and I would copy stories in Mad Magazine, and I would draw images from there and make up books about my friends and I doing different things. I basically would pass those out in the classroom. From once I got into high school, I started drawing less and less, but at that same time, I moved from North Carolina to New Jersey, and I was really fortunate to move into a school system that had a great art department. It was just the opposite of where I had grew up in North Carolina. It was Bergenfield, New Jersey, and there we had 8 art teachers at one point. And anything you could imagine was offered in this school setting, this public school setting. I spent a lot of my time with my other passion, which was filmmaking. I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I made films. This was back in the days when you actually used film. It wasn't video. It wasn't digital. We used to actually develop our own black and white film. So it was very difficult because you do all this work to film the film. Then you went to develop it, and you would ruin it in developing it. And then if you didn't ruin it then, you would probably ruin it trying to put the sound strip on, because you had to use glue, and the film would move around, and you glued this piece of tape to the film, and it would easily go across the film. So a lot of great films were ruined there. So I just recently went back to my old high school and was talking to my high school filmmaking teacher, and these kids today have it so easy. I mean, they actually made a film the day before his retirement party. And some of the older people who like myself were there, and we just shook our heads going, could have never done that back when we were in school. So I was very fortunate when it was time to go to college. I started animating my films because I did like working by myself. I didn't like working with a large group. As a filmmaker, you do have to work with a lot of people. So I started animating my film, and that brought me back to drawing and painting. When I went to college, I decided to major in illustration, and in illustration, I fell in love with drawing and painting, and that's when I sort of focused all my energies on illustrating, and it's that drawing and painting which has got me into children's books. While at Pratt Institute, I met Jerry Pinkney's son, who was attending school there. His name was Scott, not Brian, the illustrator. And Scott brought his father in to speak to us. And after I graduated, I reconnected with Jerry, and and basically over a long period of time, a friendship developed with me going up to see him and talking about my artwork. So that's my long journey to getting here. I was very fortunate to be in some right places at the right time, but it also is a path of a lot of hard work. I worked extremely hard when I was in art school to develop a good portfolio that got me my first book job within 2 years after graduating. And I've been doing books ever since. And they've gotten better and better, and now I'm doing books with my wife, who's a writer, Lisa Ransom, and we've collaborated on maybe 5 or 6 books. It's hard to keep count because some books are in production, when some books are just coming out, and now I've written my first book that I've written and illustrated. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and really appreciate my wife, who tolerates my long hours in the studio, along with my 4 children, who also are very patient and understanding with me being in the studio for lots of long hours. So now, I haven't seen the sign yet. I'm not so I'm not at that 10-minute point. Okay, so good. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I would like to draw, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I'd like to get some of you to help me draw. I like to show people how easy drawing can be and how you don't have to go to school to draw. Anyone can draw as long as you can see shapes. So I'm going to ask some kids to come up here and create some nice shapes that we all know, and those are numbers between 1 and 10. So if I can get a volunteer to come up and write a nice big number on this paper, any number they want between 1 and 10, I'm going to show you how I can make that number into an image. And I think this young lady over here is going to be my first volunteer. We're going to have to... No, not you. You sit over here. You sit back. This is going to be hard. The number 9, which happens to be my favorite number to draw with. Okay? This is my favorite part. Next person. Nice big number. In between the dots. Close between the dots. Any number you want. Between 1 and 10. Oh, I'm getting all my favorite numbers first. That's great. I didn't stack the audience either. A magician. A baseball player? A cowboy. A pirate. Okay. So 2 is the last number? Is the no, well, make it big. Make it large. This is our last number, number 2. Okay. Good job. Okay. Are there any questions about anything? We have 2 minutes left. Yes, to the mic. Could you come to the mic, please?
I'm really loud.
Oh. Yes, I am. I drew a lot as a kid. I've always liked doodling. I always like making pictures. When I think back and I talk to some of my childhood friends, I was always the one who's sort of coming up with new games and things to play with. So, yeah, I was that way growing up. And you can really get your voice across the room. Yes.
What do you think is like more fun, or what do you enjoy more?
It's always fun playing with words. That's a challenge and the interesting thing about writing. But I still like drawing and making the pictures. That's still the thing I enjoy most. Working with colors and compositions and placing figures in a space is always fun to me.
Okay, can I do another one?
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Are you going to be writing more books?
Yes, I am. There are going to be more books coming from me. Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
I assume you like what you're doing, so you're living your dream, basically. I was wondering if there's something that you can't do right now, but that's a challenge for you, that you would really love to do, that you're working towards, that's kind of your dream that you're not able to do right now, but you like to do in the future?
That's a very interesting question. There is. I'm interested in paintings, doing more gallery paintings. That would be my ultimate dream, to do that. So that's something I'm working towards. But I do feel very fortunate that my dreams did come true, to be able to make a living off of the art that I create. So I feel very fortunate. That would be the other dream I would have.
What do you like drawing better, animals or people?
People are what I enjoy drawing most. I consider myself a figurative painter. Painting people is much more challenging, especially facial and facial expressions are so much fun. Animals are good, but you can sort of get away with more with animals because most of us don't know animals that well, so it's a little easier. Overtime. Oh, I'm overtime. So my time is up. I'd like to thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.